we were talking a little bit about genetics, and I kind of wanted to circle a little bit back about that, how some of the strains are kind of Jaeger and the Blue Dream and these classic sort of outdoor strains. But I think one of the things that's interesting right now is these early strains. You guys have probably heard about the earlies, where they're taking autoflower, because autoflower, bottom line, we've probably grown it. Most of the times autoflowers are subpar. I just want to say it. They're good, they're okay.
They're getting better.
They're getting better, and there's a lot of great work that's come around compared to like when, it was Neville and like they were doing ruderalis. I mean, the Petrolis coming out of Dynafem and all these things in Europe, much better. But what they're doing, and I think is cool, is they're taking the autos and they're hitting regular THC strains with it and making them go earlier. So I think I'm like excited to see where maybe some more of our designer strains will start pushing their way more into the sun-grown categories, because I really think that the sun-grown, when it's fresh, when it has all the manna in it, it's really hard to stack up against indoor. I think that in some ways it's better, maybe doesn't have quite the bag appeal. But I think as we start to perfect that, and working with people like Phoenix Rising, we did quite a bit of distribution with them in the early days. They are a fantastic farm, and taking that shit to dispensaries, there's been a lot of times people did not know the difference whether it was indoor. And the thing is I say that like the proof's in the puffing. If they keep coming back to the Phoenix Rising strain and reordering it time and time again, I think it speaks a lot about the quality that they're putting out and how conscious it was and how small the carbon footprint on doing it that way. I mean,
yeah,
it
the
just
intent
makes
is
sense,
there. The intent is totally there. And I'm glad you mentioned the distribution. We talked a little bit about that with Casey, and being in California, distribution is kind of a mess in a lot of ways. A lot of the farmers are just really hating how they have to interact with the distribution model. And we were talking to Casey a little bit about it, and it's a lot more open and loose here in the distribution model, and I really like that. And being a distributor, tell us a little bit about that. That's something we haven't talked about on Royal Grown Radio. That's really just such a huge part. We talk about the cultivation, we talk about the community, but like, how do we bring it to the people? How does it get from the grow store in a bottle of nutrients or a bag of fertilizer and some soil all the way into the consumer's hand in an effective way?
Yeah, so just a little background on us is we had two distro licenses. Our company name is Highly Distributed, and we've actually been doing it for about 6 years. So we've seen a lot of sides of that market, and how do we, how things are cultivated and how they're brought to the people and dispensaries, and kind of even have a couple questions. So I think my understanding of how distro works in California is that they tax the distro companies as well. And then is it mandatory that you have to run things through distro to be able to bring it to a dispensary?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. So these are two huge things. So I was actually part of the Oregon was really cool in the way that the OLCC invited people in the community who were involved in cannabis, experts as they call them, to become actually part of a committee to help write the rules. Early on, I was part of the Oregon, they called it the Oregon Rules Advisory Committee for Cannabis and Wholesale. So I was on that committee. And these were two things that I really, really was working on to change. I really wanted farms to be able to go direct. I felt like there just needed to be efficient. It lacked its efficiency because there was, I would say, half the time it just makes the most sense to do it that way. Why put it through another farm? The other thing is brand continuity. Like, how is a farm really gonna shine, really represent their brand if they're showing up in a turkey bag or even a gusseted, branded pound bag, and then they're having a middleman really move it to the shop? So,
along with 30 other products or 100 other products. Yeah, I agree.
Exactly. So we really kind of pushed back. We wanted there to be a direct in Oregon. And we also thought that the tax should really only exist in one place. Let's keep it simple. We know that retail is generally where tax is collected, and it's just a lot easier to audit. If everything's in metric, every sale's tracked, you look at it and see who's paying tax and not. So I think that was a huge benefit of what we did in Oregon for setting us up for success, because without having a real good logistics platform to get the products out because the tax just starts I was thinking the other day that even in Oregon, the government's probably taking the majority of the money, because they're taxing us for the license, they're taxing us to produce it, they're taxing the people to buy it. And by the end of that, and then the cities will take a 5% or 3%. So at the end of that, it's like literally probably around 60% of it's going to the government already. And the more you push up the prices, the more you're just saying to the black market, hey, you guys are still the ones selling the weed to everybody because of the prices.
They're forcing the relevancy of the black or traditional market because of this, overwhelming cash grab. And that's a big part of what we see in California too. And I think there was an advantage in Oregon of maybe the market being developed a little less and a few less voices and a little bit less of the big ag trying to push some of this to help gain control. And that's what we saw in California is big ag behind the scenes, really, whispering in the ears, dropping those lobbying dollars, being like, no, this is what we want to see. Let's get this written in a way that's effective. But then the laws eventually fell back to the state legislature to change without any voter input or referendum. So everybody thought, oh, hey, we're voting for this thing, but they were basically voting to say, hey, state of California, set this up however you want, regardless of what it says now. You can do whatever you want now. Once you get that stamp and signed on the dotted line, big ag can kind of have their way. And we've really seen it. The laws changed very quickly. There was supposed to be like a 5-year period where people couldn't stack and have giant canopies, and that disappeared within months. And so
weeks in some cases. They had no shame in going right out there and attacking the hell out of it.
And a lot of that was actually came out of NorCal, and the groups that were really representing craft cannabis. And that's too bad. That was one of the things that we'd won on in California and then immediately lost as they sort of turned that around. And even with the latest legislation, didn't Newsom just give out $100 million to fix cannabis?
He did, and that's very fresh. So I'm not familiar exactly with what's going on that. There's a lot of question marks of what that meant. I don't know that anybody has a super clear picture yet, but
well, I think that they're going away with the BCC, the Bureau of Cannabis Control, and they're setting up 3 bureaus now to kind of run together and checks and balances sort of a system. And I've heard the pros and cons. It's yet to be seen really how it's really going to roll out and what people really think about it. But
and the trouble with money too is it just kind of is easily given away. And if somebody has the lobbying power, they're going to get the money.
Yeah.
And where maybe just going in and fixing the regs might have just created a little bit more of a level playing field for everyone.
Sure.
So we'll see. I think the big problem is just so many of the levels of taxation that are occurring.
Completely agree. It hits the grower, and in California, if you have a permit for a certain amount of square feet, you're paying for those square footage on the tax, whether you cultivate it or not, no matter what. So people are feel forced to go bigger and to fill it out and to build in ways that aren't effective and to do things that aren't really what you want to do. Because man, I'm paying for this. There's nothing I can do. And I'm going to have to pay the bill, so I better get something on those extra square footage. And I just think it's a kind of backwards attempt, and it gets just hit again at every level, like you're saying, all the way down to the retail. And the consumer is footing all of that cost.